Welcome back, Statliners. I am here with my friend Ross R. Jensen, as always, and Brian, as always. I apologize that we missed a couple weeks. I went on vacation, went and seen some Mount Rushmore. It's going to be good stuff tonight. We have a couple topics that we want to jump into. So, Ross, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. I think the break was kind of nice for me too. Got to catch my breath. And we didn't get to go on vacation, unfortunately. But we're going to go to an amusement park next weekend. So we're going to take the kids out there and it's going to be a good old time.
Where are you going?
Lagoon?
In Boise?
That is, no, it's north of Salt Lake City. I don't know much about it, to be honest, but I just know it's an amusement park that's semi close to us. So
some disappointing news that I want to touch on real quick. I lost the mustache. And it's not going to be for a long time because I shaved the mustache and my daughter looked at me and said, "What did you do to your face?" So it's got to come back now. And even the wife was like, "You look good." And I was like, "Oh, I guess the mustache is coming back now." So this is gonna be the last time that you guys see me without a mustache. I will have it hopefully next week. I don't grow facial hair very well, but I'll have it back. I'll have it back very soon.
we'll have some kind of version of a stash back next week.
Yeah, this is already a week, so it'll
Ooh.
take me a little while. Yeah, it takes me a bit. But anyways, let's jump into our favorite part of the pod, and that's the drink of the pod. Unfortunately, I don't have a new drink for you guys this evening, but I do have new glass. And like I stated, I went to Mount Rushmore and we got some souvenirs. So pretty cool little Mount Rushmore souvenir there. I also got a koozie and some other like trinkets and stuff like that. So pretty excited about that. Mount Rushmore is incredible, guys. If you've never been there, I highly recommend it. If you're into the history aspect or the kind of outdoorsy stuff, I am. It's built out of granite. It's incredible. I can't overstate how much I like Mount Rushmore. And pictures just don't do it justice. So I'll get off my soapbox. Ross, what do you got for a beer, my friend?
Okay. So I got another fancy beer here. It's got a wax top. That's how you know it's fancy. Okay. So this one is called Sour Brainless. It's a sour ale aged in oak barrels with pineapple. From Epic Brewing.
Is this a Idaho beer?
These guys are in Denver, Colorado, which, if you know much about Colorado area, Denver or the surrounding area, there's a lot of breweries there. One of the biggest breweries is there, obviously, with Coors. So I don't know. We're going to give it a shot. I don't know. I can't speak much else about Epic specifically. This is a 6.3% ABV. Stronger-ish. It's a sour, so I expect to pucker up a little bit when drinking it. Oh, it's a little rougher to open with that wax top. There we go. Smells good.
Here you go.
I always mess that up. I put it the wrong direction. Okay.
Oh, it looks like my kind of beer.
All right. Not much of a head, but that's probably because it's a little juicy with the pineapple. The intense and complex sour character of this beer is developed in oak foeders containing select cultures of pediococcus and wild yeast. They like to throw out these wild words on these descriptions. The process is slow and delicate, regularly taking a year or more.
Nice.
Cheers.
It looks good. I'm excited for this little taste test.
It is pretty good. Definitely a sour. The pineapple is not strong. Like
Okay.
this is not a fruity beer like I was expecting. I thought it was going to be pretty potent. It's like the back of the tongue. It hits just a little bit in the back end of that sip. So I don't know. It's pretty good. It's worth a shot. It's worth trying out, especially if you enjoy the brewing process and you can appreciate a beer that takes a year to brew.
So to get into some things, this has been a couple week process that I've built our pod lineup, is what I like to call it for our guests and for Ross, on some things that I wanted to touch on. And one thing I wanted to touch on, and we talked about it just before the podcast, was Luis Arise. Can he hit 400? So we talked about it just a little bit. It's going to be a massive undertaking of what Luis Arise has got to do to hit 400. He's at 379 right now. Ross, you did crunch the numbers. Do you have those numbers in front of you?
I don't have the exact numbers. I calculated out that he.
Yeah.
It seems pretty improbable.
Yeah.
Let me just put it that way. He's got to hit about 440 or something like that the rest of the way. I don't. I mean, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but he's got to be on an insane heater the rest of the season. So I don't think it's going to happen. But I could have told you 2 months ago that that wasn't going to happen. It's just, it's very improbable in this day and age to sustain that for an entire season. But he's going to finish this year probably hitting above 360, and that's pretty nuts.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. But you brought this up to me a few months ago, and I was like, "There's no chance. There's no chance in hell." But he was like, at one point, it was like 410, 405. You know, it was really, really high, and you were like, hey, he's got a shot at this thing.
So he was traded to the Marlins from the Twins for Pablo Lopez, Jose Salas, Byron Chorio. And at the time, I didn't like this deal for the Twins. And now in retrospect, I really don't like it.
Why?
Twins. Because
Pablo Lopez is Pablo Lopez has been a rock star as a pitcher for the Twins. This is actually, in retrospect, I think this is probably a pretty decent trade.
All right. Well, here's some stats to throw at you. 4.22 ERA from Pablo Lopez, who I do think is a solid pitcher. I don't think he's great. 1.2 wins above replacement. Luis Arise is at 4.1, and he had a good amount last year too as a batting champion. I want to add, he was traded as the batting champ, and he's going to get another one of those. So a two-time batting champion, a really good real-life player, a pretty decent. He can be a decent addition to a fantasy team looking for some average in particular. Not going to give you a ton else, but that's still pretty important. I don't like it. I don't like it. Jose Salas is an okay pro or prospect. He's an all right prospect. I'm not expecting him to be. I mean, to me, it's fringe if he is even an MLB regular. So I think they just got Pablo Lopez in that deal pretty much as far as major league impact. And I don't like it. I don't like it.
Okay. That's fine. Let's jump into another segment that I wanted to talk about, and that's just draft highlights. In particular, I wanted to talk about Skeens versus Cruz, because this was something that we talked about in the first half. Skeens is one of these guys that he's bigger than Strasburg, or as big as Strasburg. And Strasburg was the biggest pitching prospect that I can ever remember anything about. And Skeens is either right there or above Strasburg. And, you know, obviously he gets drafted #1 overall. And he's against a hitter in Cruz that maybe should have gone first, I suppose, or could have gone first. I don't know quite how to put that, but what's your take on Skeens versus Cruz? Did they make the right choice? Who would you rather have in fantasy? Any kind of insight? What do you got on that?
It's an easy answer for me to answer the fantasy one. The real life one, whether they made the right choice or not, I don't know. That's really tough because you do have two. I mean, and you could even throw Langford in there because he was a one heck of a talent too. But I feel like Cruz is a tier above still. And you have two like rare talents coming out of college in the same class. It's tough. Real major league clubs have to value pitching a little bit different than we do in fantasy sometimes, where injuries seems like it's a bigger concern. I'm not really sure exactly why that is because it happens to the big ball clubs too. I would have taken Cruz in fantasy easily. I think Cruz was probably the right choice. I think even as a professional, I would probably go with the bat over the arm unless I was certain that the arm was better. I mean, Skeens is a really impressive arm. I've seen him pitch a little bit, and I mean, what you read about him is super impressive too. So, I mean, big time fastball, really good secondaries, super effective in college, like great control. You don't get all that stuff very often. Steven Strasburg from San Diego State.
Yep.
Skeens pitching at LSU. I feel like Skeens had the more impressive year this year than Steven Strasburg did his year coming out and throughout his career. LSU's SEC, man. That's a big school. It's not the same quality of competition that San Diego State was playing. It's much more impressive. So I think there's an argument that Skeens is the better prospect. And I had this interesting discussion with a friend of mine about the two. And, I brought that up. It's like, well, he's most exciting since Strasburg. And I think he's the better prospect, And he's like, yeah, but would you take that if you knew how his career was going to go? And he meant that a little like, Strasburg's had all these health issues. He's had issues. And I was like, hell yeah, man. I think you take that every single time. If you know that a guy is going to have the career that he had, yeah, you take that. You take that number one. Of course. In fantasy, you take that number one because you got a certain guy that's going to have a pretty good career, a really good career, 3.24 career ERA, and through some stretches, incredibly dominant. Of course you take that. Otherwise, you're dealing with a bunch of unknowns. It's like a guessing game. I like to take the guessing out of the game as much as possible. So if I knew I was going to have a guy like that, hell yeah, I'm going for that.
Let's do a realm of unknown real quick, and let's do teammates. So let's do Strasburg and Bryce Harper. Okay. Would you rather have Strasburg's career fantasy wise, or would you rather have as Skeens, or would you rather have Cruz be Bryce Harper fantasy wise?
Well, I'd 100% take Bryce Harper over Steven Strasburg.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're coming out with the same hype though, right?
Pretty big.
It's fairly close, but yeah. I mean, okay, so this is what we're looking at with these guys. Strasburg, probably the most heralded pitching prospect to come out. That I can remember. I don't know if you can remember anyone with greater hype coming out into the draft, high school or college, it doesn't matter.
Nope.
I can't. Strasburg was the guy. Now you got Skeens, that's a parallel there. Well, Bryce Harper was the biggest name high school prospect to come out that I can remember in my
Yep.
lifetime. So
I said that on purpose because they were kind of the same within a 1-2 year period. That was the only thing we could talk about in
yeah,
baseball. It was Strasburg and Harper,
right.
and they went to the same team. That's why I brought them up the same way. I guess I could have found a better comp for Cruz than Harper.
Well, Cruz is,
I
I mean, he's probably
Yeah,
the best hitting college hitting player to come out in
yeah,
maybe a couple decades, I think, and that's notable in itself. I don't think he has got the hype that Bryce Harper had. I think he's
yeah.
going to be a very good player. If I knew he was going to be Bryce Harper, I would take
Okay.
Cruz easily.
Okay.
I think that, yeah.
Okay.
And we're still talking about Harper as a 30-year-old versus Strasburg as a 35-year-old right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely take Cruz. I would have taken Cruz number one anyway. So, but
For sure.
really good, really good. What about you, Brian?
I don't know. I think pit. I know my background, and I can't stand pitchers. Pitchers terrify me unless they're absolutely proven and haven't had any kind of injuries. I just like I want no part of them. I like Skeens a lot. His profile is perfect. Um, I'm taking Skeens.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking Skeens. That guy's nasty, man. And to have that kind of hype, because you know that anybody puts their name behind saying Skeens is better than Cruz, you know that they like it. And this is my guy. He can't be a normal person if I'm going to put him ahead of the best hitting prospect that I've seen in 10 years out of college. Like Skeens has to be that good. And there's way too many people saying that. And they are smarter than I am. So I'm taking Skeens. You know what I mean? Does that make sense how I
Yeah, sure.
layered that?
Here's a little tidbit about Skeens. He was a 367 hitter
Mm-hmm.
in his college career with a
This.
669 slugging percentage. And those numbers were all from Air Force. He was a two-way player. He's just super talented. And then when he went to LSU, they had him focus solely on pitching. And I watched an interview with him in the draft, and he had said, that let him just focus on being a dominant pitcher. And that's what unlocked his next level. And hence the reason why this guy wasn't on everybody's board for years, because this came kind of out of nowhere. Yeah, he was a catcher with Air Force. Who knew?
That really impresses me. 6'6" catcher.
Yeah. Yeah, you wonder if he hit a growth spurt or something. Jeez, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah. Big bodied guy, 235 pounds. Skeens impresses me every time I look at him just a little bit more. Every time I look at him, like, God, guy's awesome.
He's a specimen for sure.
Yeah.
So where are you putting him in your rankings? Is he your top ranked pitcher?
Yeah. I put him above Painter just the other day. He is at number 7.
Okay.
In my top. I believe I dropped Painter down to 10, and I put Skeens at 7. So he's my top rated pitcher.
I finally docked.
Funny enough, Cruz is number 6. So I'm lying to myself about this, but I'm still on board with taking Skeens number 1 overall. I think a pitcher's harder to get than a hitter. But God, I hate saying that too because it's so hard. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but I'm going Skeens.
Well, okay,
Final
so
answer.
all right, Skeens it is. So here's some interesting things to think about. Um, by the way, I have Cruise number 4, I think, and I have Skeens 7 or 8. I'm going to double check on that. But I finally docked Painter pretty
Yeah.
heavily with the Tommy John. I just, I was sticking with him. I was sticking with him through that first injury, and I was obstinate that he was going to remain my number one pitching prospect. I finally changed my position there. Skeens I have at 7, and Cruz I have at 4. So
Yeah.
we're probably pretty close on that. But I finally docked him and I put him into the 30s, I think. So
I don't fault
you
you
got to
on
stay on
that.
the field. You got to stay on the field, and we don't know what he's going to come back like in
Yeah.
what 2025 now.
Yep, 2025 is he'll be back and probably be in the pros at 2025 because he has a chance to pitch next year, pretty low. But yeah, Painter, poor guy. Love that guy.
So let's talk about this a little bit. Pitchers. At Scout the Stat Line, we have this nifty tool for the members. We have a lot of them, but we've got one that's called the formulated consensus. And in the formulated consensus, we take the rankings from 4 separate formulated ranking systems, which includes the peak projections. It includes PARS list. It includes prospect larceny formulated rankings and the bags leaderboard from pitcher digs. That gets kind of confusing. Batter game score. And there's a lot of agreement with the placement. I mean, it's not all over the board. There are some disagreement on some of the leaderboards, like one might have a certain player up very high and another might have a different guy up pretty high. But if you look at the pitching leaderboard, which is built off the same ranking systems, but looking at their pitching, it's all over the map, man. There is no agreement. It is all over the place. So I guess what I'm saying is it's really, really hard to understand pitching. And kudos to the guys that are really good at it, whether you're in a league with somebody that just is really good at finding pitching prospects, or whether it's somebody out there in the industry that has just got it down, because there are a few of those guys that are really good at it and they found a niche. Everybody goes to them because there's a lot less of them. I'm on the hitter side, no doubt about it. Pitching is not my comfort zone. I step into it, of course, but it's not my zone.
So as far as a fantasy baseball player is concerned, what do you feel is your best attribute in finding, whether it be hitter or whether it be stolen bases or on base percentage or average or a combination of everything? What do you think your niche is?
The next big thing, man. That's my niche. Finding the next big thing.
Pretty good at that. Pretty good at that.
I gotta say this though. The guys that I rarely miss on are the guys that start their professional career early. So they're either starting as an international super early, or they're coming in straight out of high school. I have way more success with those guys than I do with the guys coming out from college, because they have less time to prove themselves. The college guys do, typically speaking. They're closer to the major leagues, and their data just doesn't translate the same. It just doesn't. I mean, you're looking at somebody that's older and they might be placed all over the minor leagues. You never really know where they're going to go exactly, anywhere from, single A, maybe even rookie ball, to double A. You don't know where they're going to land. And sometimes those guys will struggle out of the gate and then they'll go into the major leagues and just be a success. It happens.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. You don't see that much with the guys that are established and they're working up the ranks. If they've struggled in their minor league career and then they go pro, they're usually not going to be a smashing success out of that.
Yeah.
Strange things happen occasionally, but you just don't see it that often. So I feel like that's the most predictable path. That's what I'm best at. And I also think that tends to be where you find the best players too, is in those younger ranks coming straight to be a professional.
Playing in the league with you for 14-ish years. Is that we're about 14 years?
I think we're at 14 or 15, yeah.
Yeah, 14. I would say that is your best attribute, is finding that true superstar that instantly becomes a success. We're talking about somebody that's in single A, and then all of a sudden gets called up out of nowhere. Soto is the biggest one that I can think of. Vlad, obviously, Wander Franco, those guys, Paul Goldschmidt.
Goldschmidt was one.
Yeah, yeah. You were really good at finding those guys that are just uber talented and then just smashing successes. I wanted all the viewers to know that my niche, if anybody's interested,
yeah, let's hear it.
is finding average, everyday players. That's what I do.
Okay, well, hey, you know what?
It's what I do.
That's a fun one, but finding an average everyday player out of all of the minor leaguers that are out there has to be considered a success too, because there's
it's not easy, but it just a few players that I can kind of put my hat on. I really shouldn't put my hat on them. I've had a lot, but like guys that I just thought were just going to be incredible, and they were good players, really good players that just
I was
average.
thinking of like Brendan Boesch for some reason.
Brendan Boesch, Neil Walker.
Neil Walker was the guy. Yeah.
Oh man, Neil Walker. He was so average. and I appreciate Neil Walker because of that averageness. Like, he won me a lot of games.
You tend to like the guys that are all around talents,
Yeah.
but not the guys that are monster performers necessarily in those categories. You're looking for a good peanut butter spread across the board.
Yeah.
And you tend to get that in like every player down your lineup is just like that guy that can come in and do it all. Not doing everything great, but he's doing it all,
Kind of reminds me of myself, really. Like, I was pretty good at sports, but that's all I was pretty good. Pretty good at everything.
The jack of all trades, but the master of none, right?
Yeah. And so if you want to follow me, you'll get an MLB regular. If you want to follow Ross, you'll get a superstar. Oh, that's sad. That is so sad to say. It hurts my feelings.
Well, you need both, so follow us both, because you can't get a superstar for every position unless you're in like an 8-person league.
Yeah. Like, I'll run through my fantasy baseball lineup right now. Granted, there are some superstars on here, but I think this will make a lot of sense. It's Adley Rutschman, Andrew Vaughn, Ao Song Kim, Alex Bregman, Bobby Witt Jr., Riley Green, Brandon Nemo, Brian Reynolds, and Zach McKinstry.
That's not bad. It's not bad at all.
It's not bad. It's
young.
Very solid.
It's pretty average. It's pretty average.
Pretty solid. You're probably gonna you keep your head above 500.
I love it. That's pretty funny. Gotta admit.
All right. Let's move on. Oh, well, before we move on to our next segment, I do want to throw a big blast out to my Tigers. Third round pick or first round pick,
Oh,
3 overall. Dude, Max Clark. Max Clark might be my favorite player in the whole draft. And that's not because I'm a Tigers fan. I think Max Clark is going to be unfreaking believable.
well,
Unfreaking believable.
they were saying at the draft, and granted they're going to talk big because that sells, but they were saying, and I tend to believe this, that in most years he probably would have been a number one pick.
Yep. He was compared to
Corbin Carroll.
Corbin Carroll. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name. Corbin Carroll. Yeah, you can't remember the name, Brian. Come on. Yeah, Corbin Carroll. And he is like he's Detroit. Riley Green's going to be 28, 29 years old when Max Clark gets to the bigs, and you're going to have like one of the greatest outfields in the league.
Well, there'll be Green and Clark, and who else is going to be?
Somebody else in 4 years.
Doesn't matter. You only need the two.
I don't know. Brian Shanks is going to be out there.
They'll draft him next year. It doesn't matter. That's pretty funny.
Maybe Akil Baddoo. I mean, Akil Baddoo's got some talent. But yeah, I really like Max Clark. Hey, to anybody that's listening, go get Max Clark. I think he might have some slumps here and there throughout his minor career, but he's going to be on a rocket ship to the major leagues, and he's not going to disappoint.
And what do you think about the guy that was drafted one spot behind him?
Langford.
Wyatt Langford, who they were talking about potentially going number one.
Yeah. We had like God, I think there were 6 or 7 guys that if they would have been in different drafts, they would have been number one, like no doubt. And I can't remember the whole draft lineup, but yeah, Langford was in that conversation.
He was in the mix. He had a really good season for the runners-up, Florida.
Yep. He had a hell of a World Series. I think he hit 3 home runs.
Oh, did he? I watched some of the World Series, but yeah, I don't recall specifics very well.
They did have that one game where everybody got like 5 hits against LSU. It was just this anomaly, and they scored 17 runs or something like that. It was insane.
Yeah, I remember that one. I remember.
But yeah, Langford, Skeens, Cruz, Max Clark, and I know there was a couple other guys that if they would have been in any other draft, they would have been number one.
Overall, I thought it was a super talented draft. I was super excited for this draft. More than I have been in past years. I don't know that I studied it as in depth as I have some of the past years' classes. I can't really say why that is. I guess I was just so focused on.
I know why that is. Because we're having some stats in the minors.
Yeah.
Like true minor stats where they're incredible stats. And we talked about this in our hometown league that we're coming off 2020. You know, we're 3 years out of it now, where 2020 ruined things because of the shutdown and stuff like that. Like it hurt these kids' careers.
Yeah.
They would have been freshmen in high school or seniors in high school going into college. Now they're finally getting their bearings back. They're finally getting into that routine of, you know, being superstar athletes like they are. And, you know, 3 years removed from that. And that's a big deal for me in general. But it also shows how backlogged we were from that shutdown, because it was basically a year and a half that these kids lost in their growth. And you'll see that in MLB stat or MILB stats, minor league stats, where you can't trust like a year, and then all of a sudden they blow up again. It's like, well, I knew this before, now I know it again. Same with college. I knew this before, now I know it again.
Well, it's an interesting topic. And would you say that we're seeing some of the same thing at the major league level too?
Yeah. Yes, yes, I
Because
do.
there were players that were lights out in 2018, 2019 that have struggled
Yep.
for a couple of years, few years. And it seems like we're seeing a resurgence of a few of those guys like Christian Yelich and Cody Bellinger.
So next thing I want to talk about, Ross, and this doesn't have to be elongated or anything like that, but a couple people that you're really looking forward to in the second half of this year that you think maybe their first half was good. Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. But I think it's going to pop. I think it's going to really go nuts the second half. And I have two guys, and I'd like to know your opinion on this because I think these two guys are obviously on my team in our hometown league, but guys that I think can really have a big second half, and that would be Bobby Wood Jr. and Riley Green.
Okay.
And Riley Green's already showed it. Riley Green's batting like 500 since he came back from the injury. He's going absolutely insane. My big one would be Bobby Wood Jr. He's got all the counting stats in the world. His average just hasn't been, crazy good, and it can be. He could have one of the best stat lines if he could just look at a pitch instead of clobbering it and, going nuts on things.
So that's a really good topic, I think, in general. Bobby Witt Jr. I had this discussion with somebody on the interwebs, and they said, I don't know why Bobby Witt is not doing awesome. All of his underlying data is incredible. And, I immediately get kind of triggered at that. And it's like, well, he's not doing awesome despite having good underlying data. And let's be realistic what underlying data means. First of all, it means exit velocity, launch angle. It means all these newfangled statistics that you hear thrown out there all the time that are meaningless without context. And I want to state that as strongly as I can. They're meaningless without context. You can have great exit velocities and not be a good player. Now, there's a flip side of that story. And if you have great exit velocities, your chances of being a major league success are much higher. There's no doubt about it. I'm not even disputing that, not for a second. Just like throwing the ball really hard means you immediately have a higher chance of success being a major league player than I do. Even though I throw the ball really hard. But once you get to that level, it doesn't matter. What matters is what do you do with that? I mean, and I had this back and forth with this person about that. And I was like, well, I'm not sure, like, the point that this person was driving at is like geared up for a big second half. And I was like, okay, but he is the player that you're seeing now for 1,000 major league at-bats and stretching back into his minor league career. Now, granted, in AA, AAA, he had a really big year, but he was still batting, I don't know what it was, like 280 something.
Pretty low.
I mean, once you translate that to the major leagues, seeing him bat 240 is not a stretch, right? It's not a stretch to take that 280 something and say, well, it'd be equal to 240 in the major leagues. That's not a big stretch. So you add all those minor league plate appearances on top of it, and you've got a really long track record of him hitting like this. and using similar kind of plate discipline. And my point was his problem is he doesn't have plate discipline. And he's not finding success in the major leagues hitting for higher average because he doesn't have good plate discipline. And pitchers don't have any incentive to throw him easier to hit pitches. And the person just disagreed with me. They threw out my argument completely. They said, no, I don't think that that's the case. The data's there. He's just got to do it. And it's like, okay, so you're saying over 1,000 plate appearances, you're still convinced he's just been unlucky. And that's what their position was. And, you know, I made a very simple statement. I said, the only reason that I'm saying this is Bobby Witt's going to get better. He will get better. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to buy him now, buy him because he's going to get better, because that's what players do as they mature and get older. Don't buy him because he's been unlucky. He's doing exactly what he's been doing his entire career, just at the major league level. And he's already showing signs of getting better, right? So to me, it's an interesting one. But if he's going to, there is a potential another level for Bobby Witt beyond just getting better because he's getting older and maturing. And that level is like superstar.
Yep.
The way he unlocks that is plate discipline. He needs to give pitchers a reason to give him hittable pitches. And I tried explaining this in a nuanced way to the person. It's like, look, sure, he gets a pitch he can hit and he crushes that thing. You know, he's barreling that sucker. It's going 117 miles per hour off the bat, whatever it might be. Like, I totally believe that he's capable of doing that, and he does it all the time. But now they're throwing him fringy stuff that's on the corner.
Yep.
You know, because the argument I got back was, no, his swinging strike rate is not that high, so he's got fine plate discipline. It's like, well, then why is he striking out so much and walking so little? You know, that's all you got to look at. Like, if you want to look at a guy's plate discipline, is those two things right off the bat and have an idea of, like, are they walking? Are they striking out? Are they doing it in balance? Are they doing one more than the other? Are they doing one way more than the other? So if they're throwing stuff on the corner and he's not able to barrel it up, then what does that turn into? It turns into a dinky little hit, you know, or something that's not going to go where he's wanting it to. It's not going to be hit the way he wants it to. It's not going to have the outcome that's productive in the major leagues. And that's the point that I'm just trying to drive home. Is like, right now, we don't see evidence of that, of the plate discipline improving. He's going to get better.
No, it is improving.
It's not. We don't see any evidence of that.
Oh yeah, it's improving.
No, we see the same player, slightly better productive results, which you would expect. But to reach that level, that's the thing he's got to fix in his approach, is just a little more patience. Maybe don't swing at those less hittable pitches, even if it's going to be a strike, you know. Maybe it's a strike, maybe it's a ball.
So that's one of my second half darlings is Bobby Witt.
Sorry, that was a long one on Bobby Witt.
No, it's okay, because I actually do see improvement on a lot of things. I think he's starting to barrel things that are in the zone, and that's why you're seeing the strikeout numbers drop a little bit and the power go up a little bit. Bobby Witt Jr. is starting to figure it out, whether you like it or not.
Hey, I like it. I'm a fan of it going a positive direction for him. I just think he's got to make some tangible adjustments.
He's also only 23 years old, and he only has 1,000 at bats in not the majors, but in pro level baseball. Bobby Witt Jr. is going to have a huge second half. My next one.
Hold on. One more thought on Bobby Witt. Some food for thought. People are saying he's struggling, and yet he's going to hit more home runs and steal more bases than he did last year. And he was 20-30 last year. That's pretty decent, nonetheless.
He's still only 23 this year.
Yeah, Yeah, just don't
It will
go
be
into them
24
expecting to get
till
a 400 OBP because that's not going to happen, right?
he doesn't need that. Like, let him grow. It's okay. It's okay to be able to struggle at 23 years old.
Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that.
Especially with 16 home runs and 28 stolen bases.
Yeah.
And a 253 average. Let him go. Let him figure it out. He is going to be really good. And I think everybody knows that, but I just wanted him to be my second half highlight that's going to explode. If he gets up to 275, look out. Look out. Look out. Riley Green. Riley Green is my second. This was also one of those things that I had put down in my notes for last week. And Riley Green has shown me that he is back. He's ready to play. He's been 2 for 4, 3 for 4, 3 for 5 in the last 3 days. Riley Green is the Tigers' future. He has to be the Tigers' future. He's batting 315 right now. The home runs are only at 7. I think they're going to go insane. I think he at least doubles that in the second half. He'll be at 20 by the end of the year.
I could see it happening. I think he missed a lot of time, so you just double his plate appearances from now, and he's at 14, 15. So I don't think it's a huge stretch to say he could get up to 20. I think he is a very good player. I think he strikes out more than Bobby Witt, actually, but he tends to take more walks, and his plate approach, from my perspective, is maybe a tad better than Bobby Witt's, and maybe that's the difference right now, because he seems to be able to get more hits despite more striking out. So something to say for that. Bobby Witt clearly has more power and more speed than Riley Green, which I think when they were coming up, you probably thought these guys,
pretty equal.
I'm talking about you, but you probably thought they're fairly comparable in those categories. But
yeah.
Witt is separating himself in those regards as a professional, no doubt.
We might see a different story next year, but with the leg stress fracture, Detroit's not letting Riley Green run.
Yeah.
They're just not going to do it.
It's interesting between the two. They have there is so much similar between these two players and yet so much different that it's just interesting to compare the two. So you look at all that, and again, I'm going off B-WAR, but Bobby Witt 1.7 wins above replacement versus Riley Green at 2.3 despite far less plate appearances is an interesting one. That's all about the hits. He's just getting more hits. So
yeah, I think those two, those are my second half darlings. I think you're going to see some insane stats by both of them. Just by, if you don't look at anything past the first half of the season, just the second half, those are my two darlings. I would say that I'm very biased about these two players. I think they're going to have huge second halves, guys. I really do. That's just my gut feeling. Granted, once again, I'm biased. Do you have two guys or maybe one guy that you're thinking is just going to have an insane second half?
Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit on this, and rather than going with like my personal takes on it, I'll color it a little bit with my personal take. But somebody had asked, has anyone thought about doing a current WRC, looking at WRC plus current versus rest of season projection? And I was like, okay, that's seems like a very simple thing to do. maybe not even rest of the season, just full. What was their full season projection? And what's the biggest difference? That way you can spotlight who is the biggest buy opportunity versus who's the biggest sell opportunity, according to WRC Plus. It's not a 100% perfect science for fantasy, but it makes sense. It translates pretty well. And I just want to list out some of the buy opportunities where we could see big second halves. I'd written this tweet, and it was among those guys was Trey Turner.
Sure.
Seems like an easy buy. He's doing very well. I kind of wonder if there's a little decline seeping into Trey Turner at this point. Age 30, it just happens sometimes. Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Easy. He's a stud. Come on, the guy's really good. People are messaging me about being worried about him. He's not even doing that bad. Come on, just be patient. It's okay. He's gonna be a really good player. Alejandro Kirk, who's had a very poor first half. The projections love him, so they still think there's something there. Guerrero Jr. also had a very poor first half. And then Carlos Correa also had a very poor first half. So there's there's a lot in common with these players. They've all had pretty poor first halves. So it makes it kind of easy, but these are also the guys, and we've seen this with Correa in particular in years past, where he's had monster second halves after terrible first halves. So I wouldn't surprise me with him in particular. Julio Rodriguez is just too much of a talent. Guerrero Jr., the guy won the home run derby. Like, I don't know what's going on there. Like, start elevating the ball a little bit. Kirk, I still believe in that bat. Turner is the one on that list that I'm kind of like, it's a good buy opportunity, but I wonder if there's some decline happening.
Sure.
I want to touch on the sells, even though like this isn't what you asked, like huge second halves. But I want to touch on those. Here were the sell opportunities. Corey Seager, because he was outperforming WRC expectations so much. Good player. I think he's in his prime. I don't know that I would sell him necessarily. Arozarena, we've already seen some regression in Arozarena recently, so I'm not surprised there. Arise, well, you can only bat 400 for so long. Ketel Marte, and this is a guy that's on my team in our home league, so I don't like seeing that, but I think that his numbers actually kind of fall back in with his 2018 and 2021 seasons pretty well, so I'm not too worried about him. Christian Walker, who's another interesting one. It seems like he's 32 years old, but it seems like his career is on an incline rather than a decline.
Sure.
He seems to be getting better. So I don't know, those last two, and maybe I'm a little biased on that. They seem like they're questionable on whether they're sell opportunities to be. All of them you could question. Corey Seager being in his prime, do you really want to trade that? So anyway, those are just some guys that I had discussed earlier in the year.
No, I like it. I think that's fantastic. While you were talking, I apologize. I have some breaking news.
Okay. What do we got?
Huge breaking news. I just traded for Nolan Arenado.
Ooh, okay.
Just got Arenado. And I traded away. Yeah. I traded away James Outman, Andre Lara, Zach McKinstry, and Isaac Pacheco.
Well, I feel like you got him for cheap, but what are you going to do with him? You got Bregman at third.
He's my utility. That's why I traded McKinstry.
Okay. All right.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh.
Gearing up for the playoffs. I love it.
I got one more trade left to go. I apologize, everybody. I just got Arenado. It's my bat. I need my big bats, baby.
Yeah, you could use that one. I like it.
Good stuff.
I feel like you got him pretty cheap too. But yeah, good.
breaking news on the podcast. Anyways, that's what we have for the podcast tonight, Ross. Do you have anything else that you want to touch on?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, it was fun doing it again as always.
We're gonna be back real soon, and guys, I just want to let you guys have a little teaser that anybody watches the podcast. I would like to do this twice a week, whether that be by myself or with my friend Ross or with a guest. I am getting into that stage where I think you guys need more content. You guys need more of what I have to say and what we have to say. So I think we're going to start doing it Tuesday, Thursday.
All right, let's do it.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
See you guys.